Skip it up and that up. All right, guys. You see wood grain. You see products in front of you. You see sausage fingers, and most importantly, you see a nice big cup of tall iced coffee with espresso shots in it. You know it's time for some kind of review, comparison, unboxing, and today we're going to be comparing the Dualshock 4 for the upcoming PlayStation 4 to its older brother, the Dualshock 3, which is for the PlayStation 3. So what we're going to do is kind of talk about a rough draft or a rough sketch of the history, I should say, of the Dualshock 3 controller. Now, if you remember, the original PlayStation 3 controller was going to be like this silver boomerang dildo looking thing. It looks like someone curved a dildo and painted it in silver. And it kind of got some negative feedback. The press wasn't too thrilled with it, so they went back to the original DualShock design. Same design they've been using since 1997. And originally, if you remember, the DualShock 3 didn't have the shock. It was just the original controller that came with the PlayStation 3 was just 6-axis. It didn't have the rumble feature in it. And then they eventually put, people complain, they put the motors back in, and then we have what's the DualShock 3 today, which still has a 6-axis technology in it. So you can do motion gaming with it, which no one really did that often, except I know there were some games that really used it, I think like Lair, or Killzone, you had to turn sometimes, you had to turn cranks and stuff, and you would use a 6-axis, but whatever. So they went back to the original DualShock design in the end with the motors and everything, and it really, to me, felt like the repackaged Shock 3, or we didn't know what else to do with the controller Shock 3, because it really is the same damn design from 1997, and it's not a horrible controller. It just feels uninspired, it feels dated, and it's not the most comfortable thing, at least for me, on the planet. It's fine, I could game with it. I mean, I game with it for most of this generation on the PlayStation 3, but it's not perfect. I mean, it's very small in the hand. Like I said, it's the original design really from 1997. I mean, obviously, besides the PlayStation button and the Bluetooth technology and the 6-axis, but on the exterior, the design of the controller really hasn't changed, and except for one thing, which was probably one of the dumbest design moves they've done. These are the triggers, which we all know. These triggers slope down when your fingers get sweaty from playing for long periods of time. Your finger slides off. They made a peripheral, a third-party company made a peripheral where it actually gives you, I believe it's convex, or they give you this regular swerved up or sloped up triggers that you could attach on here. They worked great, but after a while, like say you press down hard on the trigger by accident, they would pop right off. So this whole controller, really, the DualShock 3, 6-axis, wherever you want to call it, it felt like an afterthought. It felt like they just didn't know what to do because they're like, oh, no one likes our original dildo design, so let's just go back to what we know works. And they just, plopped a couple extra features in for better or for worse, and there you go. There's the DualShock 3. So when I saw Mark Cerny come out and, proudly introduce the DualShock 4, and he was making it like it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, I've seen so many people make so many promises in this industry, and they never come through on them, that you are a bit cynical. So, talking about all the features, how it's comfortable, I'm thinking, all right, dude, it's a DualShock 4 or DualShock 3 with a touchpad, whoopee. But I use this thing, I went out and bought it with Killzone Shadowfall, and I can tell you right now, after using the hell out of it, all of my skepticism is put aside, because as of this video, still haven't tried the Xbox One controller yet. As of this video, easily, without any hesitation, I could say this is the best gamepad I've ever used. I'm serious, without even the slightest hesitation. But anyway, let's few disclaimers I got to give. Okay, I'm not going to say this is a review of this controller. Reason why I'm not going to say this is a full review is because I used it only on the PlayStation 3. It can work on the PC. I believe Broken Games HD actually used this on the PC, and he showed some gameplay footage. If I remember, I'm going to remember actually. I'll get one of his videos. You can check out his channel and the video. I'll link a video below in the description. Okay, so I only used it on the PS3. And when you use it on the PS3, even though it worked flawlessly with all the games, there's a couple things that won't work. Okay, one, you can't use it wirelessly on the PS3. You have to have it plugged in with a micro USB cable. All right. The rumble feature does not work. The PlayStation Home feature does not work. And the touchpad, which is not too surprising, this doesn't work. So when you buy this controller, like say you just want to buy it because it's really comfortable, which I actually strongly suggest you do, you can't buy this and then trade this in saying, I have a DualShock 4 now. Hopefully in the future, Sony will realize they can make some extra cash and make this fully compatible with the PS3 with wireless Bluetooth and everything, unless there's some kind of hardware incompatibility they can never remedy. But I don't really see how even if it's newer Bluetooth technology, I'm sure they can. But as of this video, those are the features that don't work. So there's some limitations to it if you want to just use it with your PS3 and you're not planning on getting a PS4 anytime soon. But anyway, I should actually try to get some oxygen in while I'm talking because I don't think I breathed in there for like almost 2 minutes. But anyway, let's compare it to the DualShock 3. Actually, let's take a look at the controller itself first. Let's show you the differences. Actually, I would need this to show you the differences. One of the things you're going to notice is that, this is a pretty big important thing, is that the thumbsticks are a little bit smaller. But I'll tell you right now, I mean, I know some people actually prefer these convex thumbsticks. I think it's the Sandy Ravage who actually got a custom-made 360 control when he plays Call of Duty because he thinks he can be more precise. But they almost made like a convex, concave thumbstick hybrid. They're a little bit smaller, but they're a little bit tighter, meaning that they give you a little bit more accuracy. And what's cool is because they're kind of like a concave convex hybrid, if you can see what I'm saying there. See, even though it has the dip like it does in the 360, it's not a full dip. It actually is convex in the middle still. It just it gives you that precision that people like from the DualShock 3, but it gives you that concave design so your thumb fits comfortably that people like from the Xbox 360 controller. And even though they're a little bit small, I mean, for Christ's sake, look at my thumb. It should have a zip code. I have no problems using it. I actually feel my thumbs feel more comfortable on the DualShock 4 than I do the DualShock 3. My fingers actually slip a little bit on here, whereas on here, they don't. And they're a little bit more spaced apart. David DeFranco actually pointed this out, and then I have to agree with him. When some people, I game like this. Some people I know game with their thumbs like this. Everyone's different, different strokes for different folks. Could even say that saying, right? But anyway, when you game like this, sometimes your thumbs touch. He said that was a complaint for him. If you go to the DualShock 4, it's substantially further apart, and my thumbs don't touch as much. So if you game with your thumbs like this, and I guess some people do, I don't. I game, like I said, like this, but if you game like this, your thumbs aren't going to touch as much, and maybe you won't feel as much fatigue. I noticed, look, I have slight carpal tunnel in my left hand, and this controller does not bother it at all. I could play games for hours with this controller. I did to test the controller, and my hands never got fatigued. Whereas the DualShock 3, after 40 minutes, I would start to feel it in my left hand. So that's one thing that's nice too, because the controller, if you notice, is a little bit bigger. The other thing that's different is, let's look at, one thing I want to actually show you too, the controller is actually wider. And as you can see, I could prove that by, if you go here, you can almost fit the triggers of the DualShock 3 into the DualShock 4. See that? So that width actually makes this controller, like my hands feel just like cramped and jumbled on here, whereas on here, my large sausage finger gorilla hands just have room to breathe. It just much better. You could just tell that more time and effort went into this controller. Like they rebuilt it from the ground up, whereas this is just a rebadged DualShock 2 with extra features, you know. Another thing I like is the digital pad here. You can see the difference too. Each piece of plastic is longer, so it's easier to rest your thumb on it than here, which is going to be good for fighters, even though you're still going to want a fight pad or a fight stick. But for those platforming games and indie games and 2D games, it definitely is a lot more comfortable than the original D-pad on the DualShock 3. And it has a better click to it. This is actually a brand new DualShock 3 controller, so people are like, oh, Rich, of course, has a better feel to it because your DualShock 4 is newer. Maybe by like a week. This is a brand new DualShock 3. And really, honestly, This is a much better D-pad. I can already tell now to play those fighting games and those indie games, and I have used it a little bit. It is much more comfortable. The other thing you're going to notice too is that if you look here, the face buttons are not symmetrical. I never even noticed this until someone mentioned it. The face buttons are not symmetrical on the DualShock 3. These are stretched out a little more horizontally than these are vertically. Whereas on here, they are actually symmetrical, and you feel it. And the other thing too is that once again, these are mushier. They just feel cheaper. Whereas on here, they have like a good clean click to them, and they just feel a lot better. And they have kind of like a different texture to the plastic too. So it just, I can't explain it. Like the button, you feel it, you feel that click, you know it's going to respond. You can be more confident in your gameplay. I mean, I know I sound like I'm being an infomercial right now, but that's my experience that I had with this controller. I've played Resident Evil 4, I played Borderlands 2, I played Metro 2033, I played Call of Duty Ghosts, I played Call of Duty Black Ops 2, and I played some other stuff that I can't remember right now, but I played the Devil May Cry series. I played the Devil May Cry HD remake with this controller, and everything just works fantastic. And it worked perfectly with all those games too. Even the share and options buttons, they become the start and select buttons. There were some articles out there saying that these don't work at all with any games. You don't have the start and select option with this controller because they're the share and options buttons, but that's inaccurate. At least the games I played. There may be other games that don't work with the share and options buttons, but what if I noticed on the PlayStation 3, if you use the DualShock 4, they become the select and start buttons, and they worked without a hitch. So that's not true. If you see any articles telling you these buttons don't work at all, the share and options buttons, they don't act as a select and start at all, that's inaccurate. Maybe there's games out there that don't work with it, but the games I used do. Anyway, let's go up on top here. Now this is it's going to work with the light bar. If you get the camera, it's going to be able to recognize which player is who. It only, when you first press the button here, it does that white glow. And when you plug it in with the PS3, if it's charging, it's orange. When it's not charging, it just shuts off and looks like this. So nothing really special there. Like I said, this is why it's not a review of all the features. Now, the one thing they remedied on here, well, first off, the L1 and R1 buttons feel so much better. They have like this rounded shape which fits your fingers much better. And again, they have that good high quality click. Whereas again, this is a brand new DualShock controller. It's maybe, like I said, a week and a half old. It just doesn't feel as good. You know, and it feels like I'm because this controller is so much smaller, I feel like I'm straining my fingers on here. Whereas here, you have that bigger controller, they're rounded to fit, you know, my round sausage fingers, and it feels good. It just feels more natural. This controller feels like there was thought put into it. And last but not least, and then I'm going to go into the one thing I don't like about this controller, look at the back triggers. They're actual triggers. There you go, Sony. Even though I think you should have redesigned this one more time and put actual triggers on here too, you could have done it. It wouldn't have like ruined. It's not like it's like you're adding a feature that people, you know, that other games would use, that this wouldn't be, you wouldn't be able to use the older DualShock 3. You could have just came out with another revision, and if people didn't want to upgrade, they could have just used this, but whatever. Spilled milk now. 7th generation's over. They're real triggers, and they're real comfortable. I played COD Ghosts with them. I played Metro 2033. I played Black Ops 2. I played Borderlands 2. They work beautifully. Hallelujah. It only took you almost 8 years, Sony, to listen to us, but you did. So, the controller's fantastic. I love it. I can't even picture going back to this even on my PlayStation 3. But what is the shortcoming that I know some people are going to be like, hey, Rich, why are you nitpicking over something so stupid? But from my personal experience, I think it's something that needs to be noted because it just doesn't make any sense to me because there was no reason to go over to it. This uses not something proprietary to charge the controller. This uses micro USB. Now, this connector is very small. I'm going to put up a picture of a cable right now. The problem with it is because it's such a thin, small connection. I've seen it on cell phones time and time again, is that it's very easy to break this. So say if someone goes by and they go like that with their hand by accident, I guarantee you it's going to break. And these also wear down very easily. And this isn't just coming from me. I've actually never broken one on my own phone. So it's not that I'm rough with my stuff. I've just noticed that after time, these are very fragile connectors. And I'm sure a lot of kids, let's face it, I mean, gaming has become a very adult form of entertainment, a very adult hobby, but still a lot of kids play games. Kids aren't going to pay attention to this. This is going to break a lot. Whereas mini USB, which the Wii U still uses and which used on the Dualshock 3, I guess I can understand to a point, okay, mini USB is on its way out, but you could still buy cables for next to nothing, micro USB or mini USB on Amazon. This is much more durable. Even though it's still a small, you're like, Rich, it's still a small connector. It just has a lot more leverage. It's tougher to break mini USB. Trust me, I've seen it time and time again. Whereas micro USB, I'll be okay with it because I'm an adult. But I'm telling you now, you're buying a PS4 for kids, buy that protection plan with that PlayStation 4, because I promise you, or buy the protection plan with the controller if they offer it. I'm telling you, this is going to wear down and it's going to break, and I think that's a design flaw. They should have put a mini USB, not a micro USB, and I see a lot of people breaking that in the future. So my final verdict on the DualShock 4, minus that one flaw I mentioned, which to me isn't a deal breaker, just be careful with it, is it's a fantastic controller. Sony rethought their controller design from the ground up. They built it for the future, and it is one of the most comfortable controllers I ever used. It is leaps and bounds better than the DualShock 3. It wipes its ass. If it had an ass, here's its ass with the DualShock 3, and then it just poops it out after it. No, the wrong order, but you get it. It's a lot better than the DualShock 3. Alright guys, make sure to rate, comment, favorite, and subscribe. And as always, thank you for supporting Review Tech USA. And buy a DualShock 4. Even if you only have a PlayStation 3 or a PC, and you're not planning on getting a PS4, or at least getting it anytime soon, it's way better than the DualShock 3. Buy it now, please. It's awesome. Have a good one.